Hi, welcome to Complementary Colors. I am joined by
Casey Key. Hi, hello.
And Melissa Pribble.
And I am Cara. Today we are going to talk about creativity. Can it be efficient and should it? The premise of this conversation started from a mentor of mine, one of the namesakes of our firm, actually, Michael Carlson. And we were having a discussion almost 7 years ago now. And I was, if you don't know, I'm pretty type A. And when it comes to efficiency, it's like one of my favorite things besides minimalism.
Me, Cara Rude.
Right. And I was commenting to him on our employees' effort versus their timesheet. And I was like, looking at graphs and things, and he just stops me. And he's like, it could take 20 minutes or it could take 20 hours. And he's like, but when you start dictating how long creativity happens, you stifle the whole process. Oof. And I was like, yes, sir.
That's a dot mic drop.
Yes. It hit me. And I've
yes,
thought
sensei.
about it. Right. I've thought about it almost every day since. Like it hit home. And so it helped me remove judgment. So I would like to know, first question, is creativity exempt from time?
We will just look at each other.
I mean, it's yes and no.
Yes and.
Yes and, but no. I was because you can't be instantly creative. You can't just be like, this is the best idea I've ever had in my entire life. But sometimes it is. Sometimes that gut instinct, your first idea, is the best thing you've ever thought of. And the more you rehash it, the more that you're going to get away from that initial gut reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yes and for me.
I think it's also really interesting that this is the first question, because this plays also in the level of how much is that going to cost me?
Right.
I could come up with the solution now, but I'm not going to just charge you for now.
Right. And you're like, and who pays for that? Do we pay for that? Or
so I think that time is actually the hardest part of creativity. I don't think it's necessarily exempt because we have to give it a time frame, if that makes any sense. But I like to see them talked about more in seasons. So you have a space for this and a space for that. So I think that it's a yes and, but it's very interesting that it's not just what you think of as creating, like picking up a pen and pencil, but it's also how I can prepare a proposal for you,
right,
on our efforts to create something.
Well, I'm going to skip to this question then, because part of me has always thought personally that creativity was the balance, like the yin to the yang of my very efficient list making, that was my balance. But second question, is it, if problem solving was 1 versus magic making being 10, where do you think creativity falls on that spectrum? There's no wrong answer.
There's no wrong answer, exactly. And it's kind of weird that I'm going to say that it falls on every single point. 1.5.
I know. Look at you. You guys in the neutrality today.
I know, but it's kind of one of those things where if you're going to solve a problem, you have to know what the problem is. So understanding the problem is a talent in its own, because there could be multiple problems, but you have to be creative enough to know which one is actually the most important in the sequence of problems.
I feel like you read my notes and I'm a little mad. I'm feeling the vibes. I know. Seriously, stop cheating. Gosh, you can't sit with me. Is that copyrighted? No. Making sure. Well, because I wrote down as I was thinking about this, because I was trying to put a number to it. I was like, they are yin and yang, like you were saying. Sometimes productivity, problem solving, does exist without magic making, but I'd say the best problem solving can't exist without magic making.
I agree. That's a really good way to put it.
Well, I'm a solid 8. Can you guys just, for just that part of my psyche, can you just give absolutely. I want a number. Give me a number.
We fall in the make magic or
problem solver creativity.
I'm a solid 3 or 4.
You're the problem solver?
Yeah.
You like problem solving?
I love problem solving. Puzzles make me mad.
I'm like, Melissa's a 10.
Well, thank you. I like to think that I'm a 10, but I feel like I'm a 5. Like, I feel like sometimes I enjoy the problem solving, and then sometimes I enjoy the magic. It just kind of depends on my mindset for that day, like what unlocks.
I see. So before I dive into a lot of the meat of the creative process, I do have a little bit of research. So according to LinkedIn, there are over 50,000 different professional skills people can master. At the top of that list is creativity. An IBM study of 1,500 executives ranked the ability to be creative as their most desirable skill, even above management skills, integrity, and vision.
That's insane. Why do you think that is?
Because I think everyone wants magic, personally.
That's true. Everyone needs a little magic in their life.
I do think that, creativity, it would hit on those anyway. Vision and maybe not integrity, but problem solving skills. And I think people want what they don't possess. And usually that's that realm of creativity, of something being birthed for the first time. So next question. Personally, so I want you guys to respond like from in here. Do you feel that it is cultivated, or is it a natural ability to be creative?
Deeply, deeply cultivated. It does not come easy for me.
There we go.
Yeah, scathing revelation, guys.
For me personally, I think it does come naturally, just because it's the way that I filter emotions. And it took me a while to realize that is what I do. So it's kind of interesting when you think of your true self versus all the other parts and pieces of you when you're journaling or doodling or releasing something in some way. That is somewhat of a creative avenue. It's kind of interesting. A hobby, right? That's creative. Like, people have a hobby, feel better, get a hobby. I don't know. So I think it's definitely something that it comes naturally for me.
I think this is the one time I'm going to go neutral on you. I'm like, usually I'm all mad at you guys for not being polar.
Who are you?
But I have this memory as a child, and it was so funny because when our two oldest started to get of the age, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I started coaching my partner. I was like, okay, when I was little, my parents above and beyond would always tell me how creative I was, and how, it was almost like the affirmation mill of my life was my parents, just, constantly. And I think it's because they kept telling me that I was creative, I had more confidence to continue to be creative.
Nice.
And so it kind of led to my career path. And so, early on, we tried to keep telling the kids like what they're good at to try to cultivate them to maybe pursue it
And
more.
believe in it. That's
Right.
really
So
strong.
it's almost like they saw that it was natural, or maybe they didn't. They just wanted me to be. My mom's like, I'm really into interior design, so I'm gonna tell you you're awesome at it.
Okay, when I picture you as a child, I'm literally just imagine your daughter as mini Cara, and I'm like, you can't tell me that is not the most creative,
like the
scintillating little personality.
She's pretty dope.
Exactly. I was like,
so
and
funny.
if that was anything like young Cara, no wonder your parents said that you were creative.
That's funny. Well, thank you. So yes, I am on either side of that. But, because of the topic and because of Michael Carlson and giving me that astounding quote that has led me to be, I think, more open to other people's creative process, I had to ask Google to make sure, we were... So I'm like, Google, what's up? Creative efficiency or efficient creativity. And number one on both of those word swap switches was there is a 6-week audio series by Juliana Baggett, which I am almost through because I was like, okay, she's saying that this is an actual process. And she is first an author, but of many things. She's a mother, and basically, it goes through and it draws on athletes, psychologic studies, famous artists, innovators, and basically she breaks down the creative process and says every human has a creative process, and we just need to untap that and understand it so we could keep to duplicate it. So anyone familiar with the 10,000 hour rule? by
I feel
Malcolm
like I've
Gladwell.
heard that. Yeah.
It's 10,000 hours to mastery.
That is right. That is right.
Gold star.
And one of Malcolm Gladwell's quotes is, in cognitively demanding fields, there are no naturals.
There you go.
So, Casey, I would say we are in a cognitive field. There are no naturals. Like, we just happen to,
Require
revolve.
this of ourselves a little bit more.
I think so. I think also in seeing other people in my life being like, oh, I'm just not artistic, or I'm not. And you're like, well, I don't know if that's more so just like a blockade to never try or not to be judged, because I do feel like it does lie in everyone to have a different perspective, which is in my mind all art and creativity is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's non-binary too. It's not yes or no. It is a yes and always.
It is, because it's always a perspective that we're looking at something with, even in problem solving.
Even in problem solving.
It almost like defines the problem again.
Someone's problem might be someone's solution.
There we go. So I did want to talk about, and when you were saying this how we always say like left-handed and right-handed people, like left-brained, right-brained.
Yes.
And almost them in opposition to each other when really they are mutually beneficial. So, just trying to think of it in that way too, is that you have to have the logic and the artistic to benefit each other. So that's interesting, because I bucked against, I guess, when I found this audio series, I bucked against. I was like, no, you cannot make creativity efficient. They're the balance of each other. Anyway, but I did want to tell a few of these and see what you guys think of it. So she starts with courting ideas is part of the process. And she talks about generative wandering, how you could be walking or running or grocery shopping or something that feels mindless. And that in that moment, you'll get kind of like a flurry of new thought. And she says to regeneratively take that thought. So one example, and this is odd, but like you pick up an orange and you're like, I wonder where this orange came from. And then like you start to drift, it could be like, man, the color of this orange reminds me of this. And then you go back again, you're like, and then it does this. And so you almost continuously add to how simple it is, the narrative of the thing that popped into your head. And that is her way of cultivating or courting ideas. Do you guys experience that, or have any kind of things you've noticed you do to muse out ideas in your life?
I leave work. Plain and simple. It's really weird. But a lot of my solutions, especially the creative ones, come when I'm driving, either home or to work. It's kind of weird. In addition to travel, like when you actually get to just experience something and you're like, oh, that feeling is how did I get that? I want that feeling. I want to design that feeling. So then you kind of are hyper-focusing on how to get that orange, right?
Or musing in. Got it.
But yeah, no, it's if I'm stuck and I'm at the office, and I used to stay at the office, I don't do something creative if I'm stuck. I just know that it will come. I just need to unlock it by moving.
What about you?
Well, I was thinking when you were going down this rabbit hole of how this lovely author is describing her musings, if you will, it's very similar to the study of human psychology and the pathways of the brain. And the more new things that you do, the more pathways you create. And the more you do those new things, the stronger those pathways become. That's why people recommend word games. They recommend brain teasers as you're getting older, because basically you're working your brain out.
Yes.
Things like travel, you're adding new pathways to your brain. If you never traveled, if you never went anywhere, you would have a finite number of pathways in your brain. You would actually be less human than someone who has done more and has more pathways in their brain.
Does those pathways turn off?
They do, if you don't continue to use them. And so as I'm sitting here like ruminating on this, I'm like, I always have to do something not necessarily new to me, period, but refreshing in that, like, I have to either go to a space that smells different or go see something different with my eyes, because you're walking away from a pattern that has you stuck in a pathway that like has a dead end. In order to like strengthen one of the other pathways, it's going to lead you somewhere different in your brain.
Yeah. And that could be as simple as driving a new path home.
Yes.
I like that. Mine is
little neuroscience in there.
Yes.
There's your tidbit.
It's a little bit more emotional based. Like when I get stuck and I need to muse, I'm like, oh, how do I draw on the feels, you know? And so like, I'm like very emotional music cue in now, you know, I am like, or
It's the dancer in you.
oh, it must be, but it is something, and it doesn't even have to be a lyrical song, you know, it could be complete instrumental or something that just pulls, like almost like I link my most creative moments to my most emotionally turbulent or volatile. I mean, but the most highs and lows. It's like, I mean, look at some of like the most creative minds. Like I was just thinking about, you know, paintbrushes and mouth Van Gogh. Like, I mean, yes, he chemically went crazy, but like they all had to almost unlock like a different pathway and be highly volatile. Maybe didn't have to be. Maybe it's just happenstance that some of the greatest artists in our time are, you know.
I would argue that all the things that we're saying, it's almost as if you have to unlock the I am the main character spirit. Which is like, as opposed to like, I'm contributing to a team. I am part of the system. It's like when you are your most creative, you're like, no, I have formed something. I am the main character. This is my dance montage, like whatever it is.
Right.
Like there's a little bit of that spirit of like, you have to embody this almost narcissistic point of view to be able to say, I am able to create.
Or the opposite, I'm going to like pull out some Alan Watts
Oh,
right
I'm ready.
now. But you know how Alan Watts, he points out how in Western society, we're the only ones that say we feel feelings. Like we always have to own and claim a thing instead of saying, I am sad. Like I own sadness instead of saying I am in sadness. Like that sadness is a thing that exists and I happen to be in it. Just like the communal of all other emotion. Like love exists whether you're feeling it or not, but are you sitting in it or are you trying to like claim ownership to try to control it? So talk about a rabbit hole. But I would, you know, also in musing, I think we do try to draw on things outside ourselves.
Absolutely.
The next one, after you've courted an idea, which I love, it's like you're courting an idea, right? That's totally my jam. Then you cultivate flow. So you start making mini drafts. I liked that she said this because it, you know, the white blank page is my biggest nemesis. If I have started the draft before I even sat down to the task, it is less daunting.
Drafts are key.
So how do you guys feel about this, the cultivating flow through drafts? Do you guys see yourself in your creative process going through that?
Absolutely. The white page syndrome is real on even writing, drawing, color selection. Like if it's too blank of a slate, you have no outline or no research, you know, like you haven't courted an idea. It's even more intimidating when you haven't courted. So go back to courting, recommend that. But also those like racing thoughts that come into your head, like the what ifs and the this coulds and whatnots, all the basic things. You're like, pause, you're a professional. You've got this. So it's almost like taming those racing thoughts in your head. And I thought it was really interesting because I was listening to another podcast called Creative Pep Talk. Have you guys heard of it?
No.
It's really funny. I'll have to send it. It's a good one to listen to. But he was talking about how we have all these like demons and monsters in our heads because of these racing thoughts. And it's interesting because when he was talking about that, it went back to, I'm going to be authentic here. It went back to a therapy session that I had with my therapist 7 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Long time. And I was like, wow, this is coming full circle. But it was basically saying like, you're going to always feel lost in life unless you know who you're speaking for in your true self, because you have different parts of you and you're going to listen to different parts at different times in your life. And it's almost the same thing as when you have racing thoughts with that white page syndrome. You have to like pick which voice. Like, am I going to listen to the relaxed and spontaneous me? Am I going to listen to the defensive, protective me? Am I going to listen to the helpless and angry me because I don't know what I'm doing? Or am I going to believe and embrace the fact that I can balance all of those and get something on paper, even if it's an outline to start? So it's really
it's like
interesting.
your
I was like,
psychological flow
yeah,
of
just
like
finding
how
your true self
how
to
you're
start.
gonna yeah.
Very interesting.
Ooh, that's deep.
I know. I was like,
Come
I
on,
cannot
Casey.
believe that's the first thing that I
I'm
heard.
sorry, I got very caught up in listening to this.
No, that's amazing because before you even do the draft, you're like, who am I to start the draft?
Well, that, and you almost have to put your client's brain on too, right? I know maybe if I know who I am at that point in time, I need to be in the mindset of the client. What is their goal? Where are they at? Are they angry? Are they spontaneous? Are they growing?
So is there a direct correlation from creativity to empathy?
I think so.
Do you think that all creatives are empathetic? If what you're saying is in like you have to sit in sadness, that's a very empathetic thing to say.
Right. And maybe I picked a very empathetic emotion. Like, but I would say no, that it doesn't. But maybe the things that are the most like human touching are, you know?
Okay.
But I do think that when pointillism was invented, there was no point. There was no point. Oh, that just happened. I would say they were like trying to connect everybody on a deeper empathetic level. I would say it was almost like the blurry vision of New Vision. You know, I saw it.
But were they trying to get people to empathize with them?
Or
To
they
see
trying
the world
to
through their
simplify
eyes.
life.
But I do know that the movement, whether it was very in solitude and self-absorbed and maybe senile a little bit, that one example we keep using, Van Gogh, like how many exhibits, you know, of Van Gogh have been even just through our city in the past decade. You know, it's like it's still impacting people and drawing emotion, and that part of that emotion could be empathy. And so,
Well, there was just thinking about this scenario of I was walking through the MoMA during university, and I did not like it. I did not like any of the like modern art. I went into a couple exhibits that was artists that had empathized too deeply with pain and sorrow, and their creativity was locked in that emotion. They couldn't see any beauty in the world. They couldn't see anything but angst and sadness. And I walked into those exhibits, and as a creative, you know, profession, I looked around and I saw what they were trying to do and the emotion that they were sharing, and it hurt me. And so I would just like leave. And the only solace that I found was in Monet. And the whatever floor he was on at that time, like he had their giant thing of water lilies, and I would just go sit in front of Monet, and there was like this healing balm of the fact that he created out of something very different than what those other artists had done. And so it's interesting to see that your creativity not only is a process for yourself and can be self-reflection and can be healing or hurtful to others. And I don't know what to do with that. And it's a deep rabbit hole, but it just, all of this conversation is like, you have to be careful the spirit you create from, regardless of the time frame, because
that part of the process is shared, whether you wanted it to be shared or not. I did want to talk about, there was some, before I get into best practices, but this musing or this, you know, how people are like a mindless activity. There has been a lot of people that have been shown to that space between sleep and awake is where a lot of new thought and lucid thought comes from. And so one of the things she mentioned in this audio series was how Thomas Edison was known to sleep in his armchair with ball bearings in his hand, and he would put a pot underneath his hand. And so the second he would fall asleep, he'd drop the ball bearings into the pot, it would wake him up, and he would write down the ideas that came to him. And that was a pretty key part of his creative process. And so he had kind of tapped into, you know, and it sounds like, you know, Melissa, I'm getting a piece of yours is almost like the reflection of whose voice you're coming in or what type of your voice. And mine is to tap into like an almost out of body emotional experience, even if it's just enough to give me energy to go forward, and not necessarily reflecting that in the work I'm about to do. And his is to just let himself be in that lucid in between state, and try to grab a hold of what happened in his mind that time.
That's crazy. Like sleep's also important.
His poor wife.
I wonder how many cycles he took himself out of first.
Yeah.
To generate all these really awesome ideas.
So some tips. So best practice if someone's like, I don't know my creative process. Some of the things that were talked about, number one is to keep an idea of a journal of your ideas, which is a pretty common thing for creatives to do, but also write down when the idea comes to you, what are your surroundings? Who are you with? What time of day is it? Because everyone's creative process is so different that it could be any of those things that hit you. For some reason, 3 p.m. in my life has been this like evil and wonderful time where I don't know why I'm up against like so many emotional, like trivial things. And they are usually trite. Like, I'm so bored right now, or dang it, I only have 2 hours left to do the thing I need to do. But I do hit this time in my day where it's like the turning point of like, do I push through or do I not? And because it is that time, it's almost like it becomes my most creative time. Like I need that boundary, to come up against. So I've noticed that. So before I move on to the second one, do you guys notice surrounding, you said your car, is there a surrounding or a time of day that you notice that you become the most creative?
I would say it varies for me, but like creativity is normally something that I find in solitude. And like it has to be peaceful around me. The world has to not exist so that I'm not distracted by competing. I'm not distracted by, I'm a deeply empathetic person. And so if someone walks in the room that is not okay, I will be distracted from what I'm trying to do by feeling what they're feeling. And it's horrible.
You were like the yin to my yang. I'm like, bleh.
It is so horrible. But it's great on a daily basis, and it's made beautiful things in my life. But at the same time, if I need to be creative, which is again a struggle for me, like I said, it's very cultivated. I have to sit down in solitude with a time limit of like, I will be creative.
So you do need a boundary.
Exactly. Like I have to have a boundary. I have to have the motivation, and I have to have the solitude.
That's interesting because yes, it's usually outside work hours, to be frank. Wee morning, late night, where I get the inspiration, but it's also something to do with solitude too, where your mind around you and your scenarios or situations are quieting, so that you can actually listen to that inner dialogue and those emotions to get inspired. But I also think that it has to do, for me, of not having boundaries.
Really?
Like if you were to tell me that you have to come up with the solution before 4 p.m., I'm going to freak out. I'm going to give you a solution, but it's probably not going to be my best, right?
That's so
if you
interesting.
say, I need a solution by next week, you're going to get a badass solution by next week because it's going to come to me. And when it comes to me, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to take that moment and I'm going to work on it.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful because sometimes I feel like we are very similar in our creative process, and this podcast is now proving to me that we are not at all.
Good balance.
That's why we complement one another.
Do you find yourselves trying to reconstruct those creative moments?
Yes. So I also
Hardcore.
think that when you were talking about a feeling in those scenarios, this weekend specifically, when we had a fabulous Christmas party. Thank you to all who put that on. The next day, we were meeting a lot of people at that Nordic spa in our ski town. And I just remember going, oh, I'm so tired, but I'm going to go and I'm going to have fun. And as soon as I walked in, there was this really long line at reception. And I was like, wah, wah. So I'm just sitting there, which made me buy a water bottle because I forgot my water bottle. And then as soon as I walk through to that big open space where it's activated with everybody in cozy robes and eating breakfast and drinking mimosas, and I look over and I see this group of women cheersing, and I was like, I know them. And this like feeling of joy and gratitude, I was like, I was coming out of something stressful and I just got inundated by a big room that was welcoming to then allow me to see this action. And I was like, this is really interesting. I could have just like been really frustrated and kept walking down the hallway to get to the locker room. But this design didn't allow you to do that. It put you in this activated, beautiful space before you went to the locker room. So it completely changed my perspective.
It like
I probably didn't. I wouldn't have seen
prevented
them.
solitude for
Yeah,
you.
I joined them for a mimosa. It was great.
I saw you.
So it's almost the environment that you're in.
It's
It
really
totally
interesting.
takes over. And what about you? How is yours reconstructed, your creativity or your creative process, I should say, how you get there?
Boundaries are really great and have something that my best friend's mom, she's a counselor. Shout out to Mrs. Bumgarner. She's fantastic. And she has been yelling at me since I was a child that have boundaries in my life because I'm terrible at them. And it's so funny. It's like whenever I need to be creative, I have to put up my boundary. I have to be like, nope, the headphones go in, or I step away, or I joked when I was a little girl, I would like go hide in a closet to like take my like time to like draw or something, just to
Yeah.
like be away and be quiet. And because the world was then in control. And if the world is in control and peaceful around me, then I'm able to like tap into the part of me that can be chaotic, if you will, where otherwise that be quiet. That chaos, like that creative chaos needs to be set aside and like put away for a little while because everything else needs to be settled first.
That's interesting.
What about you? I'm really curious. Besides like, emotional music.
Well, I mean, it plays into how I create if I'm feeling drained of creativity. I think the first part of my creative process is improv dancing.
I love it.
And
I can
so,
see that.
And it's
Movement.
so funny because like I'll find my space. It's, have like a little dance space at my house and I'll just start dancing to whatever emotional music was tapping me during that time. But here's the kicker. And this is what is so funny where I know it's like performance driven. Like, the procrastinator in me is also the motivation in my life is that I'll put the difference between me dancing without someone watching me compared to like if I start to record to maybe try to steal this movement to use in other pieces in our dance company. The second I press play, it's almost like I elevate myself. It's like I'm that driven by performance or motivated by performance.
Or I would shut down and be like, nope.
that I think when I start to come alive.
That's awesome.
And then I guess I did just want to talk a little bit about incubating an idea. So we've had it, now we just want to make it better. There was 3 things that were touched on: time, sleep, and activity. We already kind of talked about the activity, giving your body something to do so that your mind could wander into new spaces. And then there was, sleep. And it's been really brought to the attention. There's books like The Sleep Revolution. And, things where people are saying whether it's a 90-minute nap has been proven or there's been power naps. But also it's just one of the things that was my takeaway on this is, and I want to know if you guys have done this, is they say if you have a problem right before bed, write that problem down or meditate on that problem and let sleep do the work for you. And then when you wake up, typically what this audio series was saying is that you would have a key to that time. If you fall asleep with the problem on your mind, that almost that time for your brain to resonate on it and almost rejuvenate, it will present itself in a new way, therefore a new solution in the morning. Have you guys ever found that to be true?
Yes. I think there was another book that I have to share with you guys because I cannot think of it either. But it was talking about having confidence in a brain dump, whether that's a written journal. My notes app on my phone would probably look like Monet's sketches, just all over the place. So I will, if there's something that I haven't unlocked or there's an issue or something I just am stressed that I'll forget because I'm overflowing, I'll write it down. And sometimes if I don't do that exercise, I can't fall asleep because I'm ruminating on it too much and I'm not stopping that. What I'm trying to do is that creative brain.
Yeah.
So if you write it down, it's done. I can relax, but sometimes it's like the 3:00 So you're 3 p.m., 3 a.m.
Oh,
I'll wake up
man.
and I'm like, that was it.
I'm jealous.
And now I can't go back to sleep because I can't forget this part, right? So when we got our superlatives this weekend, and I was voted most likely to be pulling an all-nighter, that's now you can get it. But also my husband next to me, he's like, "You mean starting at 3 a.m.?" And I was like, "Yes, I didn't even notice." Sorry.
That is,
But yeah, it's like
awesome,
this weird
though.
3 to 4 a.m. weirdness of like that sleep unlocking whatever troubles I had or whatever locks that I had before.
that's awesome.
I'm shocked and jealous and bitter that you guys can like have this meditative thing, because even if I have tried to like calm my spirit, calm my mind, I have a creative problem that is just blocking me, I will have nightmares about it all night.
Really?
I will not sleep at all. And it's awful. And I'll wake up and I'll be motivated to go solve the problem, if anything, but I will not have like come forth with a solution. I will just basically be mad. I will be mad, so mad to the point that I'm like, I will solve this. Damn it.
See, everyone has a different creative process. So maybe the last one on incubating an idea will hit you a little bit more. So there was a quote that I wrote down when I was listening, and it said, "Of course you don't have any ideas. All ideas come out of the work itself."
That's
So they say, with time being the third one, they say just roll up your sleeves first and then the idea will come. So one of the tips was to pay yourself first, and that is pay yourself in time. So if I know, I had written down 10 a.m., I'm like, I think I'm just the most awake and non-distracted. But really, that 3 p.m., I think is my time. They say block that out. You know, if that is your best time of day, protect that time of day. So I know I see on your calendars on Outlook all the time, focus time.
Oh, yeah.
No meetings,
Don't
please.
talk to me.
Right? Focus time. So that is another way, you know, if sleep is not helping you, or this regenerative wandering of activity, that I think the last tip here would just be to pay yourself first with a time block to let yourself be creative and roll up your sleeves.
I love it. There was one other way that I was listening to that same creative pep talk, another version, and it's the same framework that you're outlining of if you're stuck and you're trying to figure out where you're at in your creative process, you almost have to do that first, like the roll up the sleeves. And they were talking about thinking of your problem in the season. And if spring's the first one, you're going to plant as many seeds as you can. They're not all going to grow.
Right.
But you're going to plant them. You're going to roll up your sleeves and plant those seeds. And then the summer, you're going to water them and give them as much sunshine as they need to see what will grow. And then in the fall, you're going to harvest what you're going to use.
Dope.
And in the winter, you're rejuvenating.
And
Key
see,
rejuvenation. So
right?
I was
Everything
like,
we need to know.
It's the same way of saying the fact that you just need to break it down into those aspects and really cultivate, because you can get better at it as long as you realize what season you're in
I love that.
or should be in.
I would say it's like as someone who's deeply competitive, and I struggled a lot in university, especially seeing the different ways creativity came forth in my peers and how they lived it out in their various lives. And that made me deeply competitive because I didn't see it in the same way in mine. And I thought there was something wrong with me at first. I was like,
You're
no,
special.
there's a lot of levels of special I am. Woo! But it was one of those things, like I had to take a step back and be like, no, I'm motivated by different things than these other like peers of mine.
Absolutely. Yep.
And that if you're motivated by something that is completely different than any creative form, if you're like, music doesn't do it for me, if you know what, I have to go rock climbing to be creative because it's physical exertion. You've mastered something, and then you feel like you can master other things. Like creativity has no bounds and it has no master.
Once you get to the bounds, it gets going further.
Exactly. Creativity is a teacher, not a master. So let it breathe into your life in however it wants to.
I just feel like I have to throw a namaste. Like that was
Namaste.
beautifully said. Thank you guys for sharing all those thoughts, and you for joining us when we talk about our creative process.
Good luck. Sleep.
Happy creating. Peace. Deuces.
Complementary Colors is a production of MCG Explore Design, an architecture and interior design firm located in beautiful Anchorage, Alaska. If you'd like to hear more future episodes, be sure to subscribe to Complementary Colors wherever you find podcasts.